Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Bill Whittle's Hot Mic. I'm Bill Whittle. You can find all my work at billwhittle.com, by the way. If you like what we're doing here on NRA, we do a lot of videos ourselves to try and convince the American people of what's going on out there. And we have with us now Stephen Gordon. He's the communications director for Project Veritas. Project Veritas is the organization started by James O'Keefe, who famously broke up Acorn back, 4 or 5 years ago now, and who recently, just earlier today, made bombshell headlines because they have on-camera footage of a CNN producer talking about the so-called news. You know, given their socialist background, Steve, I hate to say that you got them red-handed, but you kind of did here. I want to play a clip this is from producer John Bonfield. And I would like to play a clip about the ratings and about how much there is to this Russia-Trump connection.
Keep digging. And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. Like, you have no smoking gun, you have no real proof.
Okay, Steve, so let's just make sure we're all crystal clear on this, because sometimes when you're building a case, you have to make sure every single brick is in place. This is a CNN producer speaking unaware of the fact that he's being recorded, saying verbatim that CNN doesn't really have anything on Donald Trump. That they have to keep digging, and I think the president is probably right to say, look, you are witch hunting me. You have no smoking gun. You have no real proof. They're admitting they don't have any proof, and they're admitting they're launching a witch hunt. And elsewhere in this interview, this gentleman, this person says that Trump is great for ratings. So it seems to me like they're telling lies about Donald Trump in order to make more money. Does that sound fair to you?
That's certainly the way we interpret it. Not only are they doing it to make money, it's their narrative. So they've got their political ideology they're looking at, and they got a profit motive. And in the meantime, it's the American public who doesn't get a fair shake, and it's Donald Trump who doesn't get a fair shake. And the American public deserves better. The American public deserves to know what the President of the United States is thinking or saying about policies which impact them. And they're playing gatekeeper. They're not telling about his policy issues. They're talking Russia, 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 not healthcare, not Supreme Court issues. And the American people need to know that. So we need to expose the people who are blocking that line of communication. And why do you think Donald Trump's Twitter account is so popular? It's because that's a way around people like CNN.
The producer said that, hey, this is a business, all those ethics and stuff that we learned in journalism, adorable. Couldn't be more condescending about the entire idea of ethics. He said CNN is a business, so let's be as fair to these people as we possibly can. It certainly is true that CNN is a business and they have to survive on ad revenues, which are falling apart pretty fast as near as I can tell. So you could make the case that doing stories on Donald Trump is good for ratings, good for their business. It's a privately held business. You can probably go that far. But when you start knowingly lying to the American people, telling stories that you just admitted on camera are not true, he said the producer said the entire story is mostly BS. And he didn't say BS, he used the actual word. When you've got a producer saying, this isn't true, but we're going to keep promoting it anyway for ratings, that is no longer a business pursuing ratings. That is now telling a lie to the American people in order to keep your ratings up. And that's not the same thing as, this guy's good for ratings, so we're going to put him on the headlines.
Well, the American public doesn't trust the mainstream media in the first place, and they're voting with their pocketbooks. Right now, CNN is not doing that well, even though their ratings may be a little better temporarily because of this Russia issue. Their ratings aren't that well, and Americans are voting with their pocketbook, and I expect after this video, more Americans will vote in this free market of their pocketbook by what advertising revenues, what programs they watch, and it's going to hurt CNN more, and it's time to hurt them. It's time to make them feel it in the wallet, because that's the only thing they seem to care about.
Stephen, final question for you here. People like James O'Keefe and all of you guys at Project Veritas, and also the people that went undercover for Planned Parenthood and exposed that whole thing as well, they're taking a fairly big personal risk, not just in terms of dealing with, powerful people, but they're taking an enormous legal risk. I know James has been given all kinds of prosecutions and persecutions in the time since then. What is it, do you think, that makes somebody go out and do what James does?
A pursuit of the truth. It's Streb. James is incredibly motivated. Our journalists are incredibly motivated about the truth, about exposing the truth that other people can't see or can't or don't have the ability to see. And at the White House press conference today, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, what she said, she told America to go out and watch the video. That's what she said. Learn the truth for yourself with your own eyes. Follow what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said in the press conference today. Watch the video for yourself and make up your own mind.
Sounds reasonable enough to me. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve. Steve Gordon's the communications director at Project Veritas, a project started by my friend James O'Keefe. And what's the website, Stephen? Because I know people can make donations to keep this work going.
Correct. ProjectVeritas.com. That's Project Veritas.com. And thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, Stephen. It's a pleasure having you here. You know, one of the things about this line of work, when you start making opinions public and you start standing up for things and you make yourself kind of a target, certainly a rhetorical target, you can judge yourself by your enemies, people have told me, you know, and find out that people like Media Matters or somebody's taking all kinds of lies about me. And then you can just kind of say, okay, you've arrived because you can judge yourself by your enemies, but you can judge yourself by your friends as well. And James O'Keefe is, I think, a tremendously dedicated and highly ethical person. For example, he's, in the course of his investigations, has uncovered all kinds of private information about people, but he doesn't release it. He doesn't release it to destroy them. If they're being hypocritical about saying one thing and doing something else, that's news, but he doesn't release all this stuff. It's an honor to be on the same team as him. So how do we look at all this? What is actually going on? If it had not been for the internet, we wouldn't have known any of this. James O'Keefe could have gone into those Acorn headquarters and in something like 12 cases asked to have set up underage prostitution houses, and the people behind the counter are offering government help and government funds to make it happen. We'll just have to change the name a little bit. Prior to the invention of the internet, if James O'Keefe had shot that footage, it wouldn't have been seen. Nobody would have run it. We'd have no way of knowing. The internet is actually becoming the watchdog that the press used to be. And people on the internet, like James O'Keefe and Project Veritas and others, are now investigating the news media the way the news media is supposed to be investigating other people. We can talk about a couple of examples of this, but the best one I think that I've seen so far goes back to 2004, and it regards something called the Killian Memo. So let me just back you up a little bit for those of you who may not remember this. In October of 2004, just about a month before the election with George Bush going for a second term against John Kerry, CBS News ran a story that basically said George Bush was AWOL, away without official leave, and essentially tried to portray Bush as this rich kind of, son of an influential man, and he just didn't do his duty like John Kerry did. So that's the story that CNN ran. They aired that story. CNN made a big mistake, though. They made a really big mistake. CBS, not CNN. CBS posted the actual document, the actual memo that this entire charge was based upon. And here's where it gets interesting. So they put this document up, presumably the document that shows that Bush was AWOL. And sure enough, it looks old and like it's been around for a long time, was aged and photocopied and all the rest. They put it online, and within an hour or two, just a regular person over at Free Republic by the name of Buckhead, that's his online name, Buckhead is looking at this memo, and he realizes as he's reading it that they make reference to the 187th Unit, 187th Air National Guard perhaps, but they say 187th Unit and they say in Alabama, but he looks at this and he says, wait a minute, the TH in 87th is raised. It's raised and made smaller the way you do on a word processor. But as Buckhead pointed out, if you're actually writing a memo back in 1968, I think it was, you didn't have a way to do uppercase TH. You wrote out 187, the letter T, and the letter H. Now, how did this little piece of internet formatting or computer formatting end up on a memo that goes back to 1968? Well, guess what? Another person who was never called, nobody went looking, there was no organization. This thing organized itself. That's the point I'm trying to make. Another person named Charles Johnson took a look at the memo. Supposedly, this is the smoking gun evidence of George Bush's, semi-treasonous, certainly irresponsible and disgraceful AWOL. And this person entered what was on the memo, typed it in to Microsoft Word using the default font and the default margins, didn't change anything, nothing. And he printed it out, and then he photocopied it. He printed it out and he photo-imposed it over the other one. I don't know if we have the before and after of this, but look at this. This is really fascinating to me. If you look at the pictures, I don't know if do we have the top and the bottom going back and forth? Okay. In any event, here's what's interesting. When you print this out, you have a brand new copy of the so-called memo written in 1968, and it sits directly over the Microsoft Word document. 100%. One's dirtied up, but flashing back and forth shows that clearly it was made on Microsoft Word. So CBS says, well, there's a certain kind of typewriter that's available to, typesetting houses. And somebody says, well, why on earth would you have a typewriter that costs $10,000 in a Texas Air National Guard unit in some Quonset hut someplace in 1968? And they said, well, the IBM selector could have done it. And this is the point, ladies and gentlemen. CBS is backpedaling. They said, oh, the IBM selector couldn't have done it. And another person steps forward, completely anonymous and uncalled for, out of the clear blue sky. Somebody steps forward and says, no, the IBM selector couldn't do that. They say, well, how do you know? He says, because I was the chief engineer on the IBM selectric. That's how I know. This is how we can save this republic. This is how. When common people stick together and are able to talk directly to each other in exactly the way that we're doing it right now, when common people can talk to each other and they have a means of communication, that means we can check these elitists and maybe we can stop them before they tear society down. To give you one final idea as we go out, I'll just show you a little tiny clip of something. There was a protest not too long ago. Donald Trump was speaking, and these Antifa, these young people call themselves anti-fascists. They're basically young fascists. And one of these guys decided to hit a Donald Trump supporter with a bicycle lock. There you go. That's our peace-loving, tolerant left. He's wearing a mask. See, he did it a number of times, by the way. So the question is, who is that guy, and how are we going to find out? Well, there's a group of people on the internet called 4chan, and 4chan this is how they describe themselves. They call themselves weaponized autism, and I guess that just means that these people do nothing but live on the internet. They looked at all of the photographs and all of the clothes of everybody that was at that event, and then they started comparing to other pictures. They saw a woman with the guy who had the bike lock. They tried to find her, identified her, found it, came back, and what we discovered as a result of these guys working over the course of a couple days or so is that the person who had the bike lock and was smashing people on the head, which is attempted murder, by the way, is a professor, a college professor, and his name is Eric Clanton. And he went around in a black mask beating people on the head with a tire iron, with a bike lock, rather, because they disagreed with him politically. The internet found him. It wasn't Donald Trump, it wasn't the FBI. The internet found him. The internet found him. It took a while, but they did it. So that's it, folks. That's it. That's the world we live in. We live in a world now where we can no longer trust the news media. If we ever should have trusted them, we certainly don't trust them now. And you think all is over, but it's just not true. Every single adult American in this country is walking around with a high-definition camera in their pocket. A high-definition TV camera in their pocket. Just think about that. That's something to think about. News is news because we can put it up there. And that's going to save us, I swear. I do believe it will. That's it for Hot Mike today, and we will be back tomorrow with more stories. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.